Welcome back to Vuln Vibes. We've got a deep dive ready for you today, all about some pretty serious Rsync flaws that were recently discovered.
Yeah.
So for those of you who might not be using it directly, Rsync is a really popular tool
Sure
for
is.
file synchronization. So,
Uh-huh.
you'll find it baked into all sorts of backup systems, server management tools, things like that.
Yeah. A lot of places you don't even realize it's running.
Exactly. It's one of those
Which is
things that's
bizarre.
kind of ubiquitous, but maybe a little under the radar.
Works great till it doesn't.
Well, that's the thing, right? These vulnerabilities that were found,
Yeah.
they're not just, oh, whoops, we got to tweak this a little bit. And we're talking high-risk stuff,
Absolutely.
potentially a complete server takeover.
If you're not careful.
So a team of researchers over at Google Cloud Vulnerability Research, Simon Scannell, Pedro Gallegos, and Jasiel Spelman, they dug into this. And, it's not just theoretical. They've even released proof-of-concept exploits,
Uh-huh. Yeah, the real deal.
which really underlines how serious this is. So want to walk us through some of what makes these vulnerabilities so dangerous?
Sure. So one of them is this heap buffer overflow vulnerability, right?
Okay, and just for our listeners who might not
Yeah.
live and breathe this stuff every day, what does that actually mean in practice?
So think of your server memory like a big Jenga tower. Okay? Everything's stacked up neatly, and each block is like a piece of data.
Right.
Now, with this vulnerability, the attacker can start shoving in extra blocks, not in a nice, neat way. They're overflowing the space, making the whole tower wobbly, and eventually crash.
And in this case, crash equals.
Well, in this case, the attacker can get their malicious code to run.
So it's not just a denial of service, it's taking advantage of that disruption too.
Exactly. They're hijacking the system.
That's nasty.
Then you've got the information leak vulnerability.
Because this is about stealing data.
It can be, but it's more insidious than that, right? It's like they're getting their hands on the server's blueprints, configuration details, maybe even passwords. Who knows?
So it's not just the data itself.
Yeah.
It's the information that makes other attacks easier.
Right. They can figure out exactly where to strike next.
Okay, so we've got code execution and recon. What else is in this bag of tricks?
Oh, there's more. All right. There's this file leak vulnerability.
File leak. So this is attackers pulling down files from the server.
Actually, this one works in reverse.
Oh,
It's not about the attacker stealing files from the server. It's about the compromised server pulling data from unsuspecting clients that connect to it.
so it's like a backdoor data pipeline.
Exactly. Widens the attack surface like crazy.
And this external directory file rate vulnerability sounds like a way to slip past security measures.
Yeah, so imagine your server, it's got these designated areas for storing data, right? Nice and secure, theoretically.
Uh-huh.
But with this flaw, attackers can write files outside of those areas,
So they're bypassing any restrictions you've set up.
planting backdoors, malicious scripts, you name it.
That's a big problem.
And then there's the safe links bypass.
I've heard about that one. That's about path traversal, right?
Right, so Rsync, it tries to be helpful. It's got these safety features to stop attackers from sneaking around and accessing files they shouldn't. But this vulnerability, it bypasses those safeguards.
So they can write wherever they want.
Potentially overwrite system files, plant malware. It's bad news.
So each one of these is pretty bad on its own. But what really worries me is how they can be combined, right?
Oh, absolutely. Think about it. You chain the heap buffer overflow with that information leak, boom, they've got code execution, plus the intel to target it precisely.
So even with basic read access, they could potentially take over the whole server.
It's a scary thought, right? And it highlights why security has to be multi-layered.
It can't just be one thing. It's got to be defense in depth.
Exactly.
So for our listeners out there, what are the immediate steps they should be taking?
Well, first things first, patching is crucial. The Rsync project has released version 3.4.0, which addresses all these vulnerabilities.
So update, update, update.
Can't stress that enough.
But beyond that, what are some of those proactive security measures that folks should be thinking about?
So, secure configuration practices. Principle of least privilege, only giving users the access they absolutely need. Regular security audits, those are all essential.
It's like this incident is almost a reminder to look at those tools we take for granted, the ones that are just quietly running in the background.
Yeah, they can be just as vulnerable.
So for everyone listening, I want you to ask yourselves, what's running in your environment that you might be overlooking? What seems harmless but could have similar weaknesses?
It's a good question to ask.
Take a closer look, apply what we've talked about today, and stay vigilant. That's it for this episode of Vuln Vibes. Stay safe out there.